President Trump, showing just over half of voters support his impeachment and removal from office. That, as a source is telling CNN, the president is calling Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell as often as 3 times a day, complaining about Republican senators he sees as disloyal. Let's discuss. Matt Lewis, Anna Navarro, good evening, one and all, or both. I could easily say that. And I'm going to start with you. And let's start with this new poll. I find it really striking. 51% of registered voters said the president should be impeached and removed from office. And that comes from President Trump's favorite TV network. If you're a Republican in Congress, tell me what you're really thinking when you see that and the direction these numbers are moving.
Look, I think you're between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, you are seeing some movement on this. You also have your constitutional duties. On the other, you've got a President Trump who still has a very firm control over the Republican base. And if you are a Republican in Congress, you have got to get past the primary. But, you know, Don, there's 2 things that I think are going on here. One is the evidence that's come out. It's very simple to understand. That transcript is not legalese. It's not hundreds of pages. It is a few lines, and it is easy to understand. The President of the United States asked a foreign government to interfere in investigating a political opponent. The other thing that's going on, though, I think, is the reaction of Donald Trump. Look, people who never talk politics to me have been coming up to me here in Miami. Remember, I don't live in Washington. I don't live in New York. And saying to me, geesh, he's really unhinged. He really seems unstable. I think people are unsettled and nervous by the idea that somebody that is this unstable and unhinged has the nuclear codes.
Matt, listen, Fox primetime viewers would only know about the Fox News poll tonight from one guest who just brought it up. His name is Chris Hahn. He is a Democrat. None of their primetime anchors mentioned it. What do you think? What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think there's a huge difference between the news part of Fox News, like Bret Baier and Chris Wallace, who I think are very good, and the primetime shows, which apparently don't report on the polling that Fox News does, which, by the way, is also quite good. That is part of the story here. We really live in a world now where there are certain people who don't actually get information. You know, you could, if you only watched Fox News, you might be unaware of a lot of things. I haven't flipped
Matt,
over there.
You remember, hold on, you remember the woman from the interview who was at the town hall, and she didn't know there was anything negative about the president in the Mueller report, remember? Because she said she watches Fox News.
I mean, I haven't flipped over there tonight, but the big story today has been how Donald Trump has abandoned the Kurds. And Fox News on Twitter has done some really good reporting from some of their foreign policy experts, talking to American soldiers and people in special forces who are very demoralized and saying that we've hung these allies out to dry. I don't know if Fox is covering that or not on their primetime shows.
Oh, you said you saw it on Twitter, but okay, yeah. So I don't know. I haven't paid attention this evening, the full evening, because I'm actually.
But by the way, that's part of what Anna was just saying. Is it's not just the Ukraine story that was a huge story and I think worthy of impeachment in my personal opinion, but then it turns out he had a conversation like this with China. Turns out there's diplomats who were texting about this, and then it turns out he abandons our allies, the Kurds, and hangs them out to dry to be massacred by Turkey. So if you're a Republican, it's like maybe you could sustain the Ukraine story, but every day Trump does something else, so there's another shoe to drop.
Yeah. Anna, you know the one place that the poll is featured in conservative media? That's the front page of the Drudge Report. CNN is learning that the influential conservative Matt Drudge is souring on the president. Another crack in that Teflon armor, you think?
Look, I think they want to send him a message. I think that finally, after 3 years of complicit silence and cowardice, some Republicans have found their spine, reacquainted themselves with their conscience and traditional Republican values, and are actually speaking out against Trump. The problem is, Trump thinks he owns them. He thinks he owns them the way I own my 4-pound poodle, who can't live without me, who won't eat without me. So he thinks he can get away with doing anything he wants with or without Republicans in Congress approving of it or not, because they need him to win their primaries and they need him to win their elections, and because they've let him get away with it for 3 years. This is a guy who boasted of sexual assault and they supported him, who paid hush money to a stripper and they supported him, who's enriched himself and violated emoluments clause and they've supported him, who has a $1 trillion deficit, raised it to a $1 trillion deficit, and they've said nothing about it. So they have stood by a guy who has eviscerated traditional Republican values for 3 years. And finally they find their voice and he doesn't care. He doesn't care because he doesn't need them.
Interesting. Matt, just before we go, I just want to talk about the other big story right now. CNN is reporting that the president is telling Mitch McConnell that he's going to amplify his attacks on Republicans who criticize him. You say if President Trump's behavior isn't impeachable, then nothing is impeachable. Why do you say that?
Well, I'd like to know. So right now, by the way, I'm one of the few people you'll meet who thinks there's a chance that there will be 20 Republicans. I'm not predicting it. I wouldn't bet on it, but I think there's a chance. We can go down the list. I wrote about that.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I'm saying there's a chance, like Jim Carrey. I wrote about this at the Daily Beast. But I think Donald Trump is obviously very, very nervous about this, and he is doing everything he can to push back against it. But, you go through, there are people retiring, like Lamar Alexander. You've got people like Mitt Romney who actually might do this because of principle. You've got people like Mike Lee who live in Utah. He can get away with it, and he's a constitutional conservative. You've got people like Lisa Murkowski, who won a write-in campaign in Alaska. She could do whatever she wants. So I actually think there's a shot that Republicans can get their act together. And look, if the vote was held today, maybe not. But every day something else comes out. Donald Trump is the chaos candidate, as I think Jeb Bush once said. And you know what? In 2016, maybe we wanted a little chaos. We wanted some excitement. I think after